Well, there really is a feeling of spring in the air right now, and of course, that's a time when we gardeners are entitled to get excited. I love to walk around the garden at this time of the year, just looking at the buds breaking. Some of them are the silkiest, shiniest bronze, and others the freshest green imaginable. And all of them packed with the energy and the enthusiasm of youth. Marvellous.
That short extract from Gardener's World a couple of years ago seems to me to say an awful lot about Geoff Hamilton, his passion for plants, his optimism and his sheer love of life. This programme is a tribute to Geoff, not a solemn memorial, but a celebration of his life and work. Lots of his friends will be chipping in with their particular memories of his enthusiasms and eccentricities, but one thing seems to come out from all of them. And that was that Geoff wanted to make gardening seem achievable. Even if you didn't know much about it, you could do it, provided you followed his instructions. It was a characteristic that was already well developed about 12 years ago, when he first began gardening at Barnsdale in a sea of mud.
Now, this is the site, and it's very much like many a typical building plot I know. It's heavy, sticky mud at the moment, and it's liberally garnished with more than its fair share of builder's rubble. Well, we'll be starting on this in 3 weeks' time, and I'm going to stick my neck out and guarantee that if you follow us through programme by programme, by the end of the season, you too will have a beautiful garden.
Some of the things I liked most about Geoff were his economy and imagination. The way he made ponds out of old dustbins, he made cloches out of cardboard boxes, and rocks out of waste materials. There are many people who can't afford to spend a lot in their garden, and Geoff never forgot them.
Well, now, there's no doubt that the most welcome vegetables and those that will save you the most amount of money are the early crops. So now's the time to set out some cloches on your land to warm it up and get a really early start. Now, I've made a couple especially to fit these beds, and they really are quite cheap and very easy to do. They consist of 4 bits of 50 by 50 mil, that's 2 by 2 timber, joined at the corners with angle brackets. It's very simple. Then you drill the ends for some 1/2-inch dowels, which are 6 inches long, and then you can put onto those some bits of alkathene water pipe. You can buy this at the builders' merchants. These are 6 foot long, and simply slip over the top like that to form a hoop. And then get some bits of dowel, drill the ends of them and push those in there like that so you can easily cover with polythene. Cover that with clear polythene and just hold it down at the edges with a bit of lath at the bottom here. And when you want to work on it, you use a bit of real state-of-the-art technology. This is a stick with a notch in either end, and it works perfectly. So if you want to get really early crops, make one of these this weekend. But before you do, cover up your bit of land with some clear polythene. That'll keep it dry and start the warming process. And I can guarantee you the best quality, tastiest and earliest vegetables you've ever had.
There's one thing that I always remember, and that's the cardboard box lined with tin foil. He wheeled it out every year, perhaps sometimes more than once a year. And with most people you'd say it was sort of with monotonous regularity. But with him it wasn't. It was with a sort of new enthusiasm every time. And basically you get your cardboard box from the supermarket, you cut the front off it, you line it with tin foil, and lo and behold you've got the sort of box you can raise seedlings and young plants in on your windowsill to stop them getting leggy. It was terribly simple, terribly easy, and something anyone could do, and that summed up his whole approach to getting people interested in gardening.
What you can do is to build your own portable cold frame. Now, all this is a strong cardboard box which is painted gloss white inside and out and covered with a bit of rigid plastic. Enter the Barnsdale Patent Carricot cold frame. Now, all this is a strong cardboard box painted with gloss paint to make it waterproof and a little bit of rigid plastic. And I call it the Carricot cold frame. It consists simply of a strong cardboard box painted gloss white inside and out and covered with a sheet of rigid plastic. To explain how, I have built what I call an artisan's cottage garden here at Barnsdale. Artisans because I've made it just like the poorer cottage gardeners would have done, very cheaply, and I've done it all myself. And believe me, I am no expert craftsman. All the techniques are so easy that anybody could do it. And the plants, like the old cottage garden plants, are all cheap to buy and easy to propagate and to grow. Now, during the course of the series, I'll be explaining how the garden was built, and we'll be jumping backwards and forwards in time to show how it developed. The garden is designed very simply in a straightforward, practical way, just like the old cottage gardeners would have done it. And even if you don't have a grain of knowledge of garden design, this is another thing that you can do too, because quite honestly, the garden more or less designs itself. Next week, we start building. And throughout the series, we're going to show you how to turn this into this, and this into this.
It was Geoff who got me into television gardening about 10 years ago now. And although he wasn't that much older than me, I very soon came to think of him as my horticultural dad. He had such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he was always incredibly generous with advice and help and encouragement. But of course, like all kids, I had to rebel, didn't I? And our bone of contention was colour. I'd come up with this deeply tasteful pastel planting scheme, and Geoff would roll his eyes and bung in a bit of hot orange and some screaming magenta and say, "That's what you want, a nice splash of colour," and then roar with laughter. He had a great sense of humour, and there was always a lot of laughter when you worked with Geoff.
Now, this next sequence is the sort of thing that viewers aren't meant to see. When you're doing an interview with only one camera, the practice is to record the interviewee's answers, and then afterwards to turn the camera around and record your questions and noddies, little nods and grimaces that can be dropped into the interview. But it doesn't help if somebody's making you laugh.
I'm sorry. It's you. It's you.
Thanks, Geoff.
I'm awfully sorry. It's her fault. Look, I mean, what can you do? Noddies to that. Honestly. Go away. Go away. I do noddies to no one. I think we forget the noddies.
Geoff always liked his filming to be as simple and straightforward as possible, but when he could see the point in doing something visually spectacular for powerful impact, then he was always prepared to have a go.
Most insect pests find their host plants by sight or by smell. So the more plants you grow, the easier they are to find. If, for example, you grow 25 acres of cabbages, what you're doing effectively is to put up a huge sign to every passing cabbage white butterfly that says, "Eat at Joe's." But in order to grow food economically, the farmer has to grow his crop in vast amounts and just risk the attentions of the hungry cabbage white caterpillars.
I'll need about 5 pallets up here of 6 in the morning if it's possible. Yeah, if that can come right tomorrow, and whether that won't be.
In order to avoid a great plague of insects, the farmer has to resort to chemical pesticides.
What time would you want those in for?
This field is sprayed every 3 weeks with 3 different chemicals. So that just about kills every insect. Now, in my opinion, gardeners make a mistake by copying the farmer too much. They must spray, but we don't have to take that risk. Bulking our plants together, like all these cabbages, is something gardeners just don't need to do. I've proved, for example, that the ornamental kitchen garden system really does work. We know that many insects are attracted to their host by sight. So what I'm doing here is, instead of planting my cauliflowers in a great big block, I'm putting them in a little patch like this. And then, once these are planted, I shall camouflage those by planting in amongst them these flowering plants, which will not only lift my spirits a bit, but it'll also completely confuse the cabbage aphid. But of course, this sort of mixed planting won't solve all the problems. We may well have denied the cabbage aphid his dinner, but the cabbage root fly will certainly find these plants. Now, what happens is that the female comes along, she sticks her egg tube into the soil right next to the stem of the cabbage and lays her eggs. Now, she has to do that so that the larvae have an immediate source of food. And unfortunately, when you see the symptoms, it's already too late. But what we can do is to protect them with one of these little tarred paper discs. And if you put that round the plant, snugly around, you can do this with cabbages, cauliflowers, Brussels sprouts, any one of the cabbage family, the female won't be able to get her egg tube down there, and she'll go off and lay her eggs on somebody else's cabbages.
Geoff was one of those people whose face would light up at the sight of a bunch of flowers, but not always for the reasons you'd think.
Now, I've just bought this bunch of carnations for my wife for purely romantic reasons. Well, I got them wholesale, and I also noticed that there are 1 or 2 good side shoots on them. And, of course, these will make very good new plants. They're very easy. All you do is just pull them off like that, and then just trim below a leaf joint. I'll do that one there. Take a few of the bottom leaves off, using a sharp knife like this. I also like to just compensate for the great shock this plant has had by taking a few of the top leaves off as well. And that, of course, is a perfect cutting. You then dip it into hormone rooting powder, and then put it into a mixture of 50-50 coir and vermiculite.
Geoff had strong opinions. I can always remember being shown around the nursery side of Barnsdale by him, and he'd just taken on the organic theme very seriously, and also the peat-free theme seriously. And we were looking at this compost, and I saw that it looked different. It looked like it was coir, and I asked him, although he used coir, did he use any moss peat? And the answer came back really firmly. He said, no, I don't even allow peat on the premises. Don't even allow it here. He said, if you become peat-free, you've got to stick by it.
It wasn't just peat that Geoff declined to use. He also did his bit to conserve another fast-disappearing part of our natural heritage, those rocky outcrops called limestone pavements.
Since the late 1800s, gardeners have been using Westmoreland water-worn limestone to create ornamental rock gardens. But now there's concern that this unique natural resource is in danger. And this is what it looks like once the stone strippers have been in. The lovely limestone pavements have gone, the soil between the rocks has gone, so of course the plants have gone too. It's a scene of utter devastation. Now, I think that most gardeners will be horrified to know this, so for the past few months I've been experimenting with artificial rock. It's made with a homemade concrete called hypertufa, which consists of 2 parts of coir, 2 parts of sharp sand, 1 part of fresh cement and concrete colourant. Now, if you just stick this concrete into the hole, when you dig it out, it'll look like a bit of concrete you've dug out of the ground, and of course that's the last thing you want. So the first job is to line the hole with a bit of strong polythene. Now, don't worry about getting lots of creases in it. In fact, really, the more creases there are, the better, because it's those that make the cracks and the crevices in the rock. And then you can fill up with the hypertufa. Now, the next job is to work it up the sides so that you actually make a hollow rock. And of course, this saves on 2 things. It saves the weight of the rock, and it saves quite a lot on the cost of it too. Now, I built this last year, and to make the rocks, I used the same mix that I use for my alpine troughs. Hello, Dennis, you come to help. What I didn't want to do was to use water-worn limestone from our fast-disappearing limestone pavements in the north of England. And I hope you won't either. And I'm very happy with my mock sandstone rock garden. Now it's beginning to weather in a little bit.
I think Geoff's greatest contribution was definitely his championing of organic gardening. I mean, without him, I think it could still be seen as the cranky end of the spectrum, really. But he was the leading man on the leading gardening programme, not depending on an arsenal of chemicals, not spraying his roses, not using peat, and showing there was a real alternative. And I mean, he never stood up on his pulpit about it, but, you know, there was no doubt the bigger themes were there underneath, this respect for nature and nature's mechanisms, and you know, who were we to be throwing spanners in the works, really? And that organic gardening did lead to a much richer encounter with wildlife and nature, and did produce a greater harmony between us and the world around us.
It's been a wonderful year, and I've found it quite easy to keep my small family self-sufficient in vegetables, and we won't have to buy a lot of fruit either. We've been eating our own peas. We're going to make our own wine. We've had marrows and delicious squashes. There have been runner beans and climbing French beans, and towards the end of the summer, plenty of sweet corn. We've had courgettes till they're coming out of our ears, and lots of onions too. Delicious Swiss chard, and now the apples are beginning to come on as well, and of course lots of lettuce right the way through the season. We've had herbs to flavour our food with, plenty of beetroot and lovely crisp and crunchy carrots, and my goodness, we've even had a peach or 2. What's more, none of this produce has seen 1 single drop of chemical at all. The whole thing has been grown entirely organically, and we feel great for it. But perhaps best of all, right the way through the whole operation, the gardens looked wonderful.
The great idea is to have as much colour as possible. I'm very keen on colour.
I have to confess, I've been going around the garden taking notes about the plants that you grow so I can grow them in my own garden.
Good.
And you've got some good old cottage garden favourites there, like Love in a Mist. Now, that's an annual, isn't it? So do you sow it every year?
No, I let it just sow itself where it stands, and I always get very good results. In fact, I have to pull up quite a lot of it.
Do you?
Yes, but there's quite a number of plants that I do that with. Poppies, foxgloves, forget-me-nots.
Well, you've got lots of lovely poppies around. Do you find that they cross with each other to produce new colours?
Yes, they do tend to. I think it's the bees. It's just like so many of the flowers, they get crossed by the bees, and you get some exciting things.
It certainly happens with the opium poppies, doesn't it? Which
yeah,
you've
oh
also
yes,
got.
yes. Those are very strong and very lusty.
And what about planting schemes? I mean, do you stick to a certain scheme?
No, I'm rather haphazard, really. I do think about colour and contrasting colours, but nature is very amazing, and you get some marvellous effects without doing anything.
This is one of the oldest trees in the country. It's the major oak in Sherwood Forest, and they reckon that it's at least 500 years old. And just think about that. When this tree started its life, King Henry VII was on the throne, and Columbus was just setting out on his first voyage to the New World. That's quite amazing. But of course, it's not in nature's plan for anything to live forever, so this venerable old tree is coming towards the end of its life. So what those clever micropropagation scientists have done is to take a tiny part of the tree and to produce several exact copies. Now, one of these little trees will be planted next to the old one, so you could say that this tree will still be alive when I've been dead for 500 years. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes me feel quite humble, and it makes you realise that our species is only a tiny part of the whole natural world, and that nature is not our enemy to be fought against, but it's part of us and we're part of it.
Geoff Hamilton. That's it from Gardens World this week. We'll be back at the same time next week. Until then,
A northern couple plan to escape to the country in Buckinghamshire to be near the family. That's next over on Home. Next here on Gardens, though, a wild Cornish summer goes basking with sharks, dolphins and seals.